Secondly, my salawat and salam always be with best Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has guided us from the darkness to the brightness, from the stupidity to the cleverness, namely Islam religion. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Yunisa Putri as the master of ceremony. We are very honored to have you all here. Dear everyone, to begin this amazing conference, let's start by reciting Al-Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We would like to request all participants and presenters rise for singing national anthem Indonesia Raya. Thank you, and kindly please be seated. Dear ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to the reciting of the Holy Quran will be recited by Bapak Dr. Abdul Rashid Ridho, MA. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya ayyuhalladzina amanu dzkurullaha dzikran katsira. وسبحوه بكرة هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. تحيتهم يوم يلقونه سلام. وأعد لهم أجرا كريما. يا أيها النبي أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا. وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا. ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين ودع أذاهم وتوكل على الله. وكفى بالله وكيلا. صدق الله العظيم. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Sadaqallah, sadaqallah, sadaqallahul azim. Dear ladies and gentlemen, let's pay attention to the conference report from Bapak Profesor Dr. Haji Lalu Supriyadi bin Mujib MA. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa mawalah, amma ba'du. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to read the conference report by Indonesian language. Yang sama-sama kita hormati Bapak Rektor UIN Mataram, Profesor Dr. Haji Masnun Tahir MAG, yang kami hormati Bapak Kepala Biro Universitas Islam Negeri Mataram, Bapak Dr. Andos Haji Subhi MPD, yang kami hormati Bapak Direktur Pascasarjana, Bapak Profesor Dr. Haji Fahrurazi MA, yang kami hormati Bapak Wakil Direktur Pascasarjana, Bapak Profesor Muhammad Abdul Nasir PSD, Bapak-bapak sekalian, para presenters, audiens, tamu undangan. Alhamdulillah, pagi hari ini Bapak Ibu bisa menghadiri undangan kami dalam rangka melaksanakan konferensi tahunan Pascasarjana UIN Mataram, yaitu Graduate International Conference 2023. Konferensi ini mengusung tema Religious Moderation in Textual and Empirical Study of Indonesian Islam. Ada 6 subtema dari tema inti atau tema pokok ini. Jadi yang pertama adalah terkait dengan tema pendidikan Islam, kemudian tafsir tentang dakwah, media massa dan tradisi lokal, hukum Islam, moderasi beragama, sufi, wanita, dan minoritas. Alhamdulillah, peserta yang direncanakan berjumlah 100 orang. Ini semuanya, hampir semuanya sudah datang di lokasi konferensi. Dan perlu kami sampaikan pada Pak Rektor, Pak Direktur, dan segenap hadirin bahwa konferensi ini sudah berproses sejak awal, kurang lebih 4 bulan yang lalu. Jadi dimulai dari pengumuman penerimaan artikel, ada 40 artikel yang masuk ke meja panitia dari beberapa perguruan tinggi di Indonesia. Bahkan ada juga yang mengirim artikel dari Gumusan University Turki. Jadi artikelnya ya. Kemudian dari 40 artikel ada 27 itu yang kami proses yang menurut reviewer dianggap layak untuk hadir di tempat ini, baik secara offline maupun secara online. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, sekali lagi kami sampaikan bahwa konferensi ini merupakan ajang silaturahmi intelektual dan akademik bagi para expert, para peneliti, para akademisi, para dosen untuk mendiskusikan tema-tema terkait dengan tema inti maupun subtema dari apa yang ada di hadapan kita. Dan terakhir, kami mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu sekalian, khususnya kepada narasumber, Profesor Niko. Thank you very much. Welcome to Lombok. Jadi, ya. Luar biasa, jadi beliau datang langsung dari Leiden University Belanda. Beliau datang kemarin ya. Jadi sekali lagi terima kasih kami sampaikan kepada narasumber, dan terima kasih sekali lagi saya sampaikan kepada segenap pimpinan ya, Pak Rektor, Pak Direktur Pascasarjana, dan Bapak Ibu yang telah hadir di sini memenuhi undangan panitia GIC 2023. Saya kira saya tidak akan banyak memberi atau menyampaikan laporan kegiatan. Saya kira demikian. Akhirul kalam, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dear audiences, we would like to invite Director of Postgraduate Study, State Islamic University of Mataram, for the welcoming speech, Bapak Profesor Dr. Haji Fahrur Rozi, MA. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everybody. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, al-qa'im bihuquqillah, ma'adhaqatillah wa farajallah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli waj'al li wazira min ahli, amma ba'd. His Excellencies Rector of UIN Mataram, His Excellencies and distinguished keynote speaker from Dr. Niko G.H. Keftin, Professor Emeritus of Islam in South Asia, Leiden University. Welcome to Lombok, Prof. Niko. Respectable Kepala Biro, Bapak Dr. Andes Haji Subi MPD, all the professor and Vice Director of Pascasarjana, Prof. Nasir, Head and Secretary of the Department of Postgraduate UIN Mataram, all the speakers, discussion, and faculty members and students of Pascasarjana Universitas Islam Negeri Mataram. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me in this important event today to express our thanks to God who has given us chance and blessing to teach the third graduate international conference 2023. As you all may know, that every year PASCASARJANA UIN Mataram holds an international graduate conference. The first conference was held in 2021, and the second conference was held last year, 2022. In conjunction with other conferences, International Colloquium on Interdisciplinary Islamic Studies, ICIS, and annual International Conference on Islamic Studies, ICIS. This year's conference proposed a theme on religious moderation in the textual and empirical study of Islam. We do hope that Prof. Nico will solve this issue in these talks today. Or another issue that is relevant to these conferences. Religious moderation is a rising issue in Indonesia. This term might be unpopular for scholar or expert in religious study, but it is a new topic that draws attention in Indonesia, both from the government and scholars. This term is general, refers to an effort, both an academic and policy level, to address, critique, reject, and mitigate religious extremism and intolerance that seem polarizing recently in Indonesia, socio-religious and political landscape. We do hope that paper to be presented will address this issue from various perspectives and approaches. Director, Prof. Nico, and ladies and gentlemen, the conference committee accepted a number of excellent paper submissions, but we selected nearly half of them. Today we will be three panels after the keynote speech this morning, and three other panel afternoon. The panel organized in according to specific term. This panel discussed topic related to tafsir or the study of Quran, Islamic law, Islamic education, da'wah, social media, and local tradition, religious moderation, Sufism, women and minority. And each panel consists of 4 to 5 papers. Presenters come from across the country, such as Jakarta, Surabaya, Yogyakarta, Kudus, Denpasar, Surakarta, Bone, Banjarmasin, and the host solely Mataram. Most will present physically, and few will join through Zoom. In online and offline. Let's give applause to all presenters. To end my speech, I want to inform that the committee invited international and national accredited journal editor-in-chief to discuss at the end of the conference the possibility to publication of the presented papers in the journal. Another option for publication or in edited volume or proceeding. We kindly request Pak Rektor, Professor Tongguru Mas Tahir to give a welcoming speech and to officially open the conference. Again, thank you very much for all your participation. Pak Rektor, full support. Applause Pak Rektor. Always support us all the event of PASCASARJANA. Pak Rektor not say tidak, always say yes. Okay. And especially for my college of PASCASARJANA and committee, to our guests, please enjoy yourself, Prof. Nico, in this conference. And after that, perhaps tomorrow you will enjoy Lombok for the rest of your stay here in Islamic Heritage in Bayan or in Sembalun, you can enjoy this Lombok. Because Prof. Niko the first time come to Lombok. Thank you. Ya, terima kasih. Saya serius pakai bahasa Inggris. Biasanya saya guyon saja. Hari ini saya serius. Kenapa? Karena Pak Nasir serius sekali. Terima kasih. Thank you. Ya, mohon maaf atas segala khilaf. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We would like to welcome Rector of State Islamic University of Mataram to opening remark, Bapak Profesor Dr. Haji Masnun Thohir, MAG. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wa bihi nasta'inu ala umurid dunya waddin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Amma ba'du. The Honorable Mr. Professor Nico G. Captain, our keynote speaker kita. Welcome to Lombok, welcome to UIN Mataram. Respectable the Director of Postgraduate, Mr. Professor Fahrul Razi, including the Vice Director, Mr. Abdul Nasir, and the Head of Committee, Professor Lalu Supriyadi bin Mujib bin Laden. The Honorable the Head of Bureau, Mr. Subuhi, all of the invited speaker, or the Head of Department in Postgraduate of Islamic University of Mataram, ladies and gentlemen, the first that thank Allah has given us the time, has given us mercy, so we can conduct this third international conference in good condition, and salawat and salam to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to deliver my speak in bahasa. Alhamdulillah, jadi mohon maaf tadi agak terlambat karena memang sangat padat agenda. Senin ini I like mandi, kata kita suka, bukan nasi mandi Pak Karu, tapi kita senang Senin ini. Banyak kegiatan di kampus ini. Yang keempat saya berdiri pagi ini, dari tadi subuh, kemudian apel, kemudian buka PPL, kemudian ini sebentar geser lagi. Ya, mudah-mudahan kita diberikan kesehatan, keapiatan. Tentunya kami sangat memberikan apresiasi yang luar biasa atas nama pimpinan, atas nama Sivitas Akademika kepada Pascasarjana yang hari ini dua kegiatannya, jadi waktu subuh dan waktu zuhur. Ya, jadi pemateri kita atau yang berikan keynote speaker saya kira tidak asing ya. Kami dulu waktu kuliah di Jogja itu sering membeli buku beliau, Pak Prof. Niko Kapten, ya. Saya punya bukunya banyak karena harganya murah dulu, ya, 5 sampai 10 ribu. Semua produk Inis itu adalah, ya. Besok next month, Mr. Niko, we have celebration of Maulid Nabi besar Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has a good book, ya. Saya kira buku yang sangat bagus itu perayaan Maulid. Jadi itu bisa untuk menambah referensi bulan. Seharusnya kalau bulan Maulid, beliau sebagai penceramah, as a speaker in the Maulid celebration, especially in Lombok. Jadi saya itu sering baca buku itu untuk selain berzanji dan yang lainnya. Itu lumayan, itu menambah honor kita. Yang kedua ya, selamat datang pada seluruh invited speaker atau panelis yang sukses ya. Jadi seminarnya sehari, nanti jalan-jalannya berhari-hari ya. Itu salah satu sikap moderat dalam baik dalam dataran teori maupun dalam dataran praktis ya. Jadi sesuai dengan tema kita, jadi tidak kaku gitu harus di ruangan terus ya. Tapi memang diskusi ini sangat menarik ya di saat menguatnya pemikiran-pemikiran yang saya kira itu anti toleran, pemikiran-pemikiran yang sangat tekstualis, maka terus kita hadir ya memberikan pemikiran yang solutif, pemikiran-pemikiran yang moderat ya di tengah masyarakat. Saya sering katakan bahwa sejarah Islam itulah sejarah mazhab, firqah dan mazhab. Dalam kitab Al-Milal wan Nihal Syekh Rastani ya. Sahrastani ya. Nah, ini Pak As-Saukani ini. Kalau beliau Syekh As-Saukani. Samsus Saukani. Tapi dalam kitab Al-Milal wan Nihal itu mengatakan bahwa sejarah Islam itu adalah sejarah firqah, mazhab dan aliran. Tetapi yang eksis sampai sekarang itu tidak banyak. Itu kenapa? Satu, memang ada ahli waris pemikiran itu ya, ahli waris mazhab itu. Yang kedua adalah pemikirannya itu connect. Pemikiran itu bukan disconnect, apalagi discontinue. Nah, ini Scopus itu. Jadi connect dengan kondisi di mana doktrin itu dijelaskan. Jadi makanya kenapa mazhab yang eksis sampai sekarang ya dalam di Indonesia ya Syafi'i, kemudian begitu juga saya kira pemikiran-pemikiran kita ini Bu Propaten ya, bukunya Ibu Aminah Wadud Muslim itu kan tidak fully objektif ya, jadi ada beyond the text, ada historical background yang mengelahirkan pemikiran seperti itu. Saya pernah baca skripsinya teman itu bagaimana Syekh Abdul Rauf As-Singkili itu menulis di antara syarat menjadi hakim itu tidak ada dituliskan jenis kelaminnya itu. Apakah perempuan ataupun laki-laki. Itu berarti memang sangat moderat. Tetapi waktu itu memang Aceh dipimpin oleh sultanah. Nah, ini artinya bahwa setiap pemikiran itu tidak terlepas dari wa ma haulahu ya, sekitarnya. Ya, jadi ketika menjadi mazhab pendidikan, jalan pendidikan akan berbeda dengan mazhab jempong misalnya. Nah, jadi itu yang jadi makanya tidak ada yang itu li'annal ukula mahmana dijat qatuhtiu. Nah, ini ada bahasa Arabnya sedikit itu. Nah, jadi makanya tidak bisa lepas dari itu. Itulah yang dikatakan dengan ada lingkaran hermeneutis yang menyetari sebuah pemikiran. Sehingga jangan sampai ada yang kita sakralkan ya. Ada wilayah-wilayah yang yang as-sawabit, ada wilayah-wilayah yang al-mutagayyirat. Nah, jadi letak dasar para mazhab-mazhab maupun teolog-teolog itu juga memberikan pemikiran seperti itu. Sehingga itulah diantara kalau baca buku misalnya spiritualitas pesantren misalnya Pak Kiai Hussein Muhammad juga bagaimana mazhab-mazhab dulu itu ya. Jadi elastis ya, fleksibel ya. Ya hari ini bisa dalam ranah politik kita bisa. Saya pernah ditanya dulu di kota Mataram itu. Pernah ada PDIP bergabung dengan PKS, itu apa? Nah, itulah fleksibel. Jadi fleksibel. Ma ana illa rajulun siyasiyun. Nah, jadi itu. Jadi artinya bahwa apa ini pemikiran, ya. La yungkaru tagayyurul ahkam bi tagayyuril amkini wal azminati wal amkinah wal awaid. Itu Syekh Ibnul Qayyim Al-Jauziyah menjelaskan seperti itu. Jadi apalagi yang lain misalnya kebetulan saya dengan Prof. Patun, Prof. Nasir itu kan hukum, jadi Islamic law dan local tradition itu bagaimana berdialektika, Islamic law and adat counter misalnya, itu kan berdialektika setiap pemikiran. Artinya bahwa ada wilayah-wilayah yang wilayah-wilayah yang kalau baca bukunya Prof. Ratnaul kita itu bahwa fikih itu kan hasil dialektika antara pesan-pesan samawi, pesan-pesan profetik samawi itu dengan kondisi aktual bumi. Nah, jadi itu makanya kita tidak itu harus melihatnya dalam konteks yang tadi. Ada aspek teologisnya maupun aspek sosiologisnya ataupun antropologisnya. Sehingga ada yang mengkombinasikan antara teosentris dengan antropologis menjadi teoantroposentris. Nah, jadilah. Tetapi itu menjadi wilayah kajian bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu nanti yang masih fresh. Kalau kami ini sudah numpuk dengan macam-macam disposisi dan sebagainya. Jadi sudah banyak yang hilang insight maupun perspektifnya. Makanya seminar seperti inilah bagian dari hifzul akli, memelihara akal pikiran kita, ya. Setelah itu nanti habis ini press kemana-mana, ya. Tapi jangan lupa ini nanti kemudian jurnal tulisan ini dikirim ke jurnal-jurnal kita di UIN Mataram, ya. Jangan lupa disitasi, pokoknya dilengkapi dan dikirim ke kita. Kalau dikirim ke tempat Bapak Ibu sekalian yang masih misalnya dari Kudus tadi itu masih, masa Kudus kirim Kudus, masa mana lagi saya? Teman tamu kita dari Banjarmasin, ya. Ya, jadi jangan kirim kembalikan ke Banjarmasin, kembalikan SPPD-nya saja ke situ. Jurnalnya ke sini, tulisannya ke sini, kan? Jadi agar apa? Agar terjadi tadi silaturahim akademik di antara kami. Ini juga bagian dari bagaimana UIN Mataram terus menghadirkan, ya, perspektif baru, pemikiran-pemikiran dalam rangka berkontribusi untuk peradaban kita. Kemudian juga mudah-mudahan juga dengan kegiatan-kegiatan seperti ini UIN Mataram wabil khusus Pascasarjana, ya, meningkatkan branding akademiknya maupun non akademiknya. Kita berharap juga ini juga mengantarkan kita menjadi roadmap kita untuk mendapat akreditasi yang unggul. Sekali lagi saya semua kegiatan-kegiatan yang akademik itu tidak pernah saya menolak itu. Karena kadang-kadang Pak Direktur itu kan sambil berdiri begini, besar sekali. Kemudian datang nanti Pak Wadir ini serius sekali. Apalagi belum pulang misalnya, itu sangat serius sekali. Kalau kurang dikirimin saya Pak Yudin Citradin, itu lebih menakutkan lagi. Jadi tapi itu itulah berjamaahnya di Pasca, selamat yang terus menerus, ya. Pak Fahri jangan lupa dokumentasi. Biar penampilan kita amazing hari ini. Akhirnya berharap ridho Allah Subhanahu wa taala dan kegiatan kita berjalan lancar, sukses. Mari kita buka dengan sama-sama membaca basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dear everyone, we would like to invite Head Study Program of Arabic Language, Postgraduate Studies State Islamic University of Mataram, Bapak Dr. Haji Dedi Wahyudin MA to lead the prayer. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable audience, Pak Rektor, all guests, presenters, in hoping the blessing of God in our program today, allow me to lead the prayer and allow me also to pray in Arabic. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Hamdan yuafi ni'amu yukafi'u mazidahu ya Rabbana. Walakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karim wa azimi sultanik. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad. Tibbil qulubi wa dawaiha wa afiyatil abdani wa shifaiha wa nuril absari wa dhiyaiha wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma waffiqna lima tuhibbuhu wa tardah. Allahumma jammilna bil afiyati was salamah wa haqqiqna bit taqwa wal istiqamah wa a'idhna min mujibatin nadamah innaka sami'ud du'a. Allahumma wassi' afaqana fi bahri ulumika ya Allah innaka antal alimul hakim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we are in the main point of this agenda. We would like to invite our judges keynote speaker, Bapak Profesor Dr. Nico G. Kaptein from Leiden University. Please welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It is a real pleasure for me to be here, and I would like to thank the authorities of this university for giving me the opportunity to share some of my ideas with you in this very interesting international conference. I would like to also thank the organizers, and in particular I would like to mention my former student from Leiden University, Professor Abdul Nasser, who has actually picked me up from the airport yesterday and immediately started showing to me parts of the beautiful island of Lombok. This is my first time here, and I really enjoying myself, and I do hope it will not be the last time. And actually, I am here as part of a large trip, because I have retired last May. We retire at 67 in the Netherlands, and I was honored by the UII, the Universitas Islam International in Indonesia. So we have now UI, we have UII, and we have UIII, and yeah. Perhaps we are waiting for the quadruple UI, right? But there was a farewell seminar in which I was honored for my work, and there were some former pupils, because I was in Jakarta, who took the initiative also to invite me to other places in Indonesia. I came yesterday from Padang, where my former student Yasrul Huda, who is now Purek Satu, I think, hosted me, and I was also very happy to speak there on Ahmed Khatib al-Minangkabawi. And it's really a pleasure to be here. I will also give this speech, but also in the afternoon for the graduate students. And after this, I go to Serang to yet another pupil. So I'm really making like a kind of a farewell safari, and I am enjoying myself very much. The topic of the conference, as you see, religious moderation in textual and empirical study of Islam, I think is very much appealing to me. I think it has been very well chosen for a number of reasons. First of all, of course, I was a professor of okay, thank you. I was a professor of Islam in Indonesia, and now, of course, I'm a professor emeritus of Islam in Indonesia. And for this reason, I think I'm very happy to see that the focus here is on Indonesian Islam. And the reason why I'm happy about this is, of course, that Indonesian Islam, I think, in the wider study of Islam in general is unfortunately still underexposed. If you compare, for instance, to Egypt or Morocco or whatever, Saudi Arabia, I think Indonesia is still underexposed, while I think this is a pity. Because if you look into the comparative study of Muslim societies, I think Indonesia really has a lot to offer in terms of data, in terms of information, in terms of new developments, and so on and so forth. So I think if you focus, like you do here today, on Indonesian Islam, this is very good because it can also form a contribution to the comparative study of Muslim societies. Furthermore, I'm very happy to see that you pay attention to textual and empirical study, right? Because I think both of these approaches, both the study of texts to understand Islam by going into texts, is very important, but also it's very important to look into the empirical study of Islam. And I do not precisely what you mean by this here, but I think we would say perhaps anthropology of Islam or the study of Islam in daily life. And I think it is precisely the combination of textual studies and empirical studies which is very important in order to get a good understanding of Islam. Because sometimes you see people, they neglect texts in a particular society. Foreign people do not really want to spend time on learning the local languages or learning Arabic for that matter. But I think it's important, and you see that the combination of these two approaches is very important, and this combination also brings the very best results. So another thing for the title is, of course, the concept of religious moderation. And I think this is precisely the issue which is also extremely important. And I think also in the comparative study of Muslim societies, the Indonesian experience of religious moderation is also very important to be part of the general discussion, to look how Indonesian people at the grassroots, but also Indonesian politicians, Indonesian respective governments have dealt with this issue of religious moderation. And therefore, I think it's also important that in these type of discussions, in general, the Indonesian experience is also included. However, of course, the concept of religious moderation is, of course, perhaps not very straightforward. What is precisely meant with this, right? And I come back to this later in my conclusion, but first of all, I would go into my more methodological remarks on the issue. You think it is necessary to translate or to summarize in Indonesian or not? It's okay, okay. So, well, as the title of my presentation, I have written down here. Why studying Indonesian Islam? Question mark. A few methodological notes, right? And my presentation has, of course, an introduction, which is basically what I have been discussing just now. Then I will, as a second section, I will give one particular example of studying Indonesian Islam, and then I come to a conclusion, and in the conclusion I will also come back, of course, to the introduction and to the concept of religious motivation. So the example I want to deal with, and which hopefully will be an interesting contribution to the discussion in this interesting conference, is an example of one of the founders of the study of Indonesian Islam. And people who know me and who know my work will not be surprised that this is an historical example, because most of my writings are historical. So what I would like to give as an example is that I deal with a small part of the work of Christian Snoeker-Gronje. Snoeker-Gronje, the name might be not familiar to anyone, but on the other hand, if you are interested in Indonesian Islam and you go back into the, let's say, the history of these studies, you come across Christian Snoeker-Gronje. And it's very interesting to note that Christian Snoeker-Gronje also made this combination of textual and empirical studies, right? But now I'm interested, if you remember the title of my presentation, why studying Islam? Now I'm interested in the question, why did he study Islam? What were his motives? What purpose did he have in studying Islam? But before I go into one particular example, I give a little bit of a background information on Snoeker-Gronje. Of course, he was Dutch, like me, and born in 1857, died in 1936. And what is important here, because I mentioned him, one of the founders of Indonesian Islam, that in 1889 he came to what was at that time the Dutch East Indies, right? Indonesia under the colonial domination of the Dutch. And he became the advisor for native affairs, as this was called. Perhaps now we could say like Menteri Agama maybe, or Minister of Religious Affairs, but anyway, he was responsible for the religious policies. And for this reason, of course, there was the Governor General, who was like the Viceroy, who was the supreme political authority of the time. But Snoeker-Gronje was responsible for the religious policy, and he wrote a lot of religious pieces of advice to the colonial government. So he told them, well, it's better to do this, it's better to do that, and so on and so forth. Now, one particular issue which is very important. Can I have some water, please? Excuse me. excuse me. So one of the issues in which he was involved as the advisor to Native Affairs was the Aceh War, right? We know that the Dutch wanted to control and to defeat in military campaigns the Achenese people, to make them more firm part of the Dutch East Indies. And in the Achenese resistance at that time, so it started already in the 1870s, but when Snooker Gronje was in the Dutch East Indies, Aceh War was also very strong. And in this Aceh War, of course, religion played a very large part. Islam was to many of the Achenese rebels or freedom fighters, Islam was like an inspiration to them, right? And for this reason, Snooker Gronje was involved. Snooker Gronje was, of course, an expert in Arabic language. He was expert in Islam, Islamic studies, Islamic texts. He had studied, for instance, Islamic texts and Islamic fiqh in Mecca when he was a student there. But Snooker Gronje also wrote many advices related to the Aceh War. But he did not only contributed it to the Dutch war against the Achenese in, let's say, the ideological battle or the ideological justification of the war against the Achenese, but he also went along in the field, in military campaign, to help the military, like Van Hertz, who was the best known general, to help him in his military campaign. Now I come to, let's say, more of a methodological issue, because we know that Snooker Gronje had written a book on the Achenese. Perhaps I see someone nodding. Perhaps some of you have ever seen this book or heard about this book. Yes, anyone heard about the book? It is still a very well-known book, and the book is also a combination of textual and empirical studies, and he published it in 1893 and in 1904. And the interesting thing is, although the book was more or less presented as an academic work, it was based on the advice to the government, right? And when Snooker Gronje had from the publisher a number of copies, he distributed among some friends. And one of those friends was a study friend from Leiden called Bavink. The name is not very well known maybe, but this friend wrote back to Snoek and he said, well, this book, the Acehers, you have sent me is to me a little bit disappointing, because it does not really give a very deep analysis, or it does not really is to me very, very academic. And then Snooker Gronje wrote back to him a letter, and I have a quote here from this letter, which Snooker Gronje wrote to his study friend Herman Bavink in 1895. Snooker Gronje at that time was living in Batavia. And the reaction is as follows. I quote here, I translated it from Dutch into English. First of all, you, so this Snoek writing to Baving, first of all, you have to realize that my work, the Achenese, is the elaboration of a report which I have submitted to the government, primarily with a practical and not above all a scientific purpose. In it, one might expect to learn what light science may shed on the subject dealt with for the benefit of practical affairs, and not the latest word of science about fundamental metaphysical problems. In case I have succeeded to have given some useful knowledge for which our government has a great need, I have accomplished my goal. End of quote. So this is, of course, a very interesting quote, because in it, here Snoek Gronje touches upon the motives for writing, right? Of course, in the first place, Snoek Gronje had an academic motive. He wanted to inform an academic audience of the situation in Aceh. But what is also very important, and it's interesting to see that he is saying this himself in the letter, that the book also have practical motive, right? And practical here, of course, means, it's very important, in the framework of the Aceh War, it also has strategic and political motives, right? And the point I like to make here is that the book, the Achenese of Snoek Gronje, cannot be regarded as a purely academic work, but as a book with mixed motive, also with definitely practical, political, strategic elements in it, right? So this was my example. Now I come to the conclusion of my presentation. So I think if we read a book on anything, but let's say maybe Islam in Lombok or Islam in Egypt, whatever, of course we should always be aware of what type of perspective the author has, what type of background the author has. And in order to do this, we need to have a critical approach in studying academic works, right? And this is really going for any book, because in a book we always have to try to establish what are the empirical facts and what is interpretation. And of course we know interpretation can differ, and I would also say that any interpretation also has a subjective element in it, which means that every author brings in, whether he or she likes it or not, something of his or her own background, right? And there's of course much more to say to this, but there is always a element of subjectivity in it, right? So, for instance, if we study about KUPI. What is it? Congres Ulama Perempuan Indonesia. I think it might be a difference if the researcher is female or if the researcher is male, right? They might bring in their own perspective, right? And now if we try to apply these brief methodological remarks, if we try to apply this to the concept of religious moderation, I think this is interesting. This is, of course, the theme of the conference. So, but it's also important, of course, that as an academic concept, this should be approached critically, right? You should, if you use the concept, you should know what it means. Who is using the concept? What is the perspective of the person who is using this, right? What is also the motive of using this? What is the purpose of using it? And we could also ask ourselves, if we study Indonesian Islam, it can be in text or anthropologically, right, empirically. If we come across the opposite of religious moderation, right, like intolerance or whatever, or radical, what does this mean? And what is then the, how do we deal with this if we come across this in the empirical study of Islam in Indonesia? And I think this is, from my side, a kind of a critical contribution to the theme. It is, as I said, a very important theme, very intriguing theme, and I think also an important theme. So perhaps, I don't know what the plans of the organizers are, but perhaps it's also possible to publish something. And I would really make a plea that if you publish this in English, this could also become part in the, let's say, international academic debate, at least in the West, on the comparative study of Islamic societies, and in this case with the focus on the concept of religious moderation. I have been, well, studying Islam in Indonesia myself for a long time, and I have always been very impressed with the critical and also the, let's say, very intelligent ways in which people were able to think about these matters, and also sometimes the courageous ways in order to do this. And I don't know if the former president, Abdurrahman Wahid Gus Dur, is popular here in Lombok, I don't know, but I have always been a great fan of his thought and his ideas on, let's say, religious harmony, religious tolerance, and also the way how he has intellectually underpinned these ideas. And I think these ideas of Gus Dur deserve to be studied still until today, and also to, let's say, to be more exposed to a wider international audience. And for this We have, of course, the Encyclopedia of Islam of Brill, and I am one of the editors. I'm the editor for Southeast Asia, so I would also suggest that they put in information on Gus Dur, for instance, but also on other important Muslim thinkers like Shafi Ma'arif and Nurcholis Majid, so that from an international perspective, people can learn from the Indonesian experience. So I think these were, from my part, a few methodological remarks, and I would like to wish all of you success with your presentations, and I wish you also very fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, next agenda is delivering a token of appreciation from Director of Postgraduate Study, Bapak Profesor Dr. Haji Fahrur Rozi MA, to Mr. Professor Dr. Nico G.G. Kaptein. Please welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are in the end of opening of ceremony. Please give applause to our keynote speaker and our rector for today. Okay, now we will move to the photo session. Dear everyone, I would like to invite rector, vice rector, director and vice director, head of bureau, head and secretary of study program, and half of committee to have a place for photo session of Postgraduate Study, State Islamic University of Mataram. Please welcome. Baik, kami persilahkan untuk keynote speaker dan seluruh tamu undangan dan half of committee to take a picture. Baik, sesi pertama dimulai dengan main point of this agenda.
Bapak Rektor, Bapak Direktur di atas, ya. Dan saya kira untuk Kaprodi, Sekprodi di atas saja semuanya, kemudian nanti peserta di bawah. Bapak Ibu dosen, panelis, silakan kita di atas, peserta bisa di bawah.
Baik, sekali lagi dipersilakan untuk peserta mengambil tempat. Baik, sekali lagi kepada seluruh peserta dipersilakan untuk mengambil tempat karena kita ada sesi foto bersama. Baik, mungkin ladies bisa duduk sebagian. Sebagian bisa di depan. Oke, rapatkan sap. And then photographer, all of you ready guys? Oke, now saya akan hitung and then 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now give your big smile guys, ladies and gentlemen. Or maybe another style. Okay, give your time and then see the camera. 1, 2, and 3. Cheers. Okay, thank you so much everyone. Okay, dear everyone, this time to have a coffee break. You can enjoy your coffee and meal